What's going on, folks? Here at Wheel DynoWorks, and today we are back in the shop with our 24 MT-09, and we are testing and tuning the M4 full exhaust. It's big, it's black, it's loud, and it is made in fucking America, so we instantaneously love this pipe. Nothing else quite looks like this on these bikes. You're not gonna find black headers anywhere else, you're not gonna find the resonator and then the extended muffler tip anywhere else. The Leo Vince is similar in that it's got the same style resonator, but then the tip just comes right out here. This guy gives you, honestly, a much deeper tone than Leo Vince does, and you know what? It performs quite a bit better. Here's our final run for this setup, folks, and again, this has the DNA air filter installed, the M4 full exhaust, and our custom ECU mapping here at Wheel DynoWorks. It makes about 117 and 2/3 of a pony, and 68.5 pound-feet of torque to the tire on pump gas. Now, so far, before we'd installed this system and tested it, the highest outputting system we had seen on this bike yet was the full Yoshimura system. But it's not quite an apples-to-apples comparison because we do have the DNA air filter installed now, which is worth about 1 horsepower at the very peak and over rev, and somewhere between like 1 and 1.5 horse in the middle. So here's what I'm talking about, folks. The red line there is the Yoshimura exhaust system on this bike with our custom ECU mapping to match, and the blue line run 23 is what we were just showing you as the bike sits right now with the M4 and the DNA installed. And yeah, you can see that the M4 outperforms the Yoshimura by maybe 2 horsepower or so and about 1 and some change foot-pounds of torque through the mid-range, but a lot of that's going to be eaten up by the fact that that's where you gain about 1.5 pounds from that DNA air filter. And again, I've said I don't know how many times in the past, I'm never a guy that's gonna get stuck in the nitty-gritty of 1 or 2 horsepower here and there, because as we've always said, these systems perform very similarly to each other as long as proper ECU mapping is in place for each specific pipe. And the reason I stress that so much is that while these pipes do perform very similarly to each other on the dyno, where only one makes maybe 1 or 2 horsepower more than another in one spot and the other makes 1 or 2 horsepower more than another, the fuel mapping needs to get these properly dialed in are quite different from each other. For example, on this M4 pipe, there are parts of the fuel mapping where we've had to increase volume by 18, 19, in some areas even 20% over stock to get the AFRs where we want them. Whereas with the Yoshimura exhaust system, even though it performs very similarly, it requires significantly less fuel. Now, obviously, I'm not going to overlay the two and educate our competitors out there because that's just not what I'm here to do. My point is to illustrate that there is at least a 5% difference from the fuel mapping needs of this pipe versus the Yoshimura pipe, and you will feel 5%. 5% too lean or 5% too rich is enough to make the thing feel just a little bit off. It's really not going to hurt anything to run 5% too lean or too rich for any sort of extended period of time, but it's just not the right way to do it, which is why we always build custom ECU mapping for each specific intake and exhaust combination on all the bikes that we buy to perform our ECU mapping R&D process on, and then offer that ECU mapping to you folks through our mail-in flashing service. And it's also incredibly important to note, while I'm on the topic of AFRs and what is and isn't safe, that running these bikes with a full exhaust and an air filter with no custom ECU mapping to match it is not a good idea. You are going to be 20% too lean with the stock fuel mapping on these bikes at wide open throttle in some spots, and that's just not going to work in the long term. Sure, you can do it. It's not going to hurt anything short term. It's not going to cause anything to catastrophically explode the first time you go ride it, but you're going to be massively increasing EGTs when you're running it that lean, and you're going to be shortening the life of your bike, period, end of story. And I guarantee that after I've said that, there's going to be plenty of people in the comments sections wherever I post this going, oh, but I've had my 20 whatever the fuck MT-09 and I put a pipe on and I've been riding it forever without a tune and it's fine. Good for you. You've probably ridden it 7,000 miles the entire time you've owned it. I promise you, it's not good for the engine to be running at a 15-to-1 AFR at wide open throttle going down a straightaway. It's just not. So if you're going to spend the money to buy an exhaust system to uncork and shed a bunch of weight off your new 2024 MT-09 and you're expecting performance improvements like this, where you're picking up over 10 horsepower and 6 foot-pounds of torque peak to peak and over 14 horsepower there in the over rev, please hop on our website, wheeldynoworks.com. Purchase our mail-in ECU flashing service. We'll get it properly set up and tuned for your specific intake and exhaust combination and shipped right back out to you the same day we receive it. And I can guarantee that your bike will run smoother, cooler, and stronger than it ever has before. That's all I've got time for today, folks. I'm going to go out in the shop now and play eeny, meeny, miny, mo with the other exhaust systems we've got just lined up ready to go for this thing for testing and decide which one we're going to put on next. As always, if you have any questions whatsoever about getting your new 24 MT-09 properly tuned and dialed in, do not hesitate to email us at support@wheeldynoworks.com because we are always happy to help.